Daughters of the Dust is a film directed by Julie Dash that had many other creatives involved, such as director of photography Arthur Jaffa, editors Amy Carey and Joseph Burton, and music composed by John Barnes. Daughters of the Dust is set on a summer day in 1902 off the coast of the Sea Islands by North Carolina and Georgia coast. The film transports the viewer to Ibo Landing, which is a small Gula community on the island off of the coast of Georgia. With the Gula community being completely isolated from the main world and not being able to reach the mainland unless usage of boat, they were able to maintain their African heritage and rituals. Though the film is told through a nonlinear and circular narrative, the audience is able to know that the main storyline for the film is whether the family should stick to their roots at Ibo Landing or leave home and start a new beginning on the mainland. This is narrated through Nana Payzant and Ula's unborn baby. We see this decision-making through specific characters within the film. Nana Payzant, the great-grandmother and the keeper of all traditions of the Payzant family, and she practices her African and Caribbean rituals that are meant to commune the past with the future. That is also one of the biggest aspects of the film. Hagar, a character who was just married into the family but does not agree with Nana Payzant's traditions. She seems as superstition and magical thinking. Iona, Hagar's daughter that wants to be with her mother on the mainland but also has a native boyfriend on the island that she doesn't want to leave behind. Yellow Mary is Nana Payzant's granddaughter who left Ibo Landing years ago. While away, she became a prostitute, which ruined her name back home, leaving family members suspicious to leave Ibo Landing. Ula and Eli are a married couple, Eli being the grandson of Nana Payzant. Eli has believed in Nana Payzant's ways of his upbringing until his wife Ula was raped by a white landowner on the mainland. Though the characters' dynamic with one another allow the audience to realize the emphasis on the past and present, which is represented primarily through the fact that the narrator is Ula's unborn child, but also with Nana being a parallel narrator. Nana being the influence of the past and Ula's unborn child being the influence of the future. Symbolism within the objects to help prove this point is used a bit in the film. For example, there's an old tattered umbrella that Yellow Mary, Chula, and Eula find and use. It's a visual motif that reoccurs in the film, represents the past, as well as repurposing something old into something beautiful and new, which Nana Payzant contributes the old traditions in the new generation, wanting to upgrade the traditions to modern times. Another example of blending the past with the present and future is a scene at dinner where Nana Payzant takes her mother's hair and weaves them pieces of her own hair, which symbolize how much of the past and their traditions are still relevant to their life in today's world. With the blending of the hair, it is able to connect across generations, across physical distance, and across personal differences within the family of either staying or leaving to go to the mainland. Through this revolution comes that the only way the Payzant family can move past their generational trauma that stems from slavery is that if they can love each other through their differences. In the end, Hagar and half of the family left Ibo Landing to go to the mainland, while Iona, Yellow Mary, Ula, and Eli, and as well as their unborn child, stay on Ibo Landing.
Even though Julie Dash's Daughters of the Dust was created in 1991, in order to understand the film, we have to look back at a different era than the one in which the film was created. Since the time of slavery, Blacks and African Americans have been fighting for basic human rights. It wasn't until the lynching of 14-year-old Emmett Till in Money, Mississippi in 1955 that when his killers weren't held accountable, that Blacks and African Americans united together to not only protest Till's death, but to also fight against brutality from the white race as well as equality for all. This would begin the civil rights movement, which picked up speed in the 1960s with leaders such as Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, John Lewis, Kathleen Cleaver, and many more. During this movement, Blacks and African Americans were experiencing an increase in police brutality. Specifically in Los Angeles, on August 11th in 1965, in Watts County, a young Black man by the name of Marquette Frye would be stopped by a white patrol officer. During Fry's arrest, a scuffle would occur between Fry and the officer that led to what we now know as the Watts Uprising, where for 5 days straight, the community rioted against police brutality and the oppression of minorities. Shortly after this rebellion, UCLA would get an increase of African and African American students to attend their film program. This, as stated in LA Rebellion, Creating a New Black Cinema, it states, to create an alternative cinema and narrative style and practice to the dominant American mode of cinema. Through their media, these filmmakers wanted to share the Black experience as humanely as possible, instead of Blacks as subjects for people to observe. Cut to the late 1980s to early 1990s, where even though the civil rights movement is over and Blacks and African Americans are trying to progress and move forward, there are still obstacles holding them back. For example, Reginald Lewis was the first Black businessman billionaire, and Ronald H. Brown was the first Black person to head 2 major political parties. With these accolades also came downfalls with remembrance of past abuse, such as in the same year Dash released Daughters of the Dust, which was in 1991. It was the same year that the Rodney King beating had happened, as well as protests for the beating had occurred as well. In this time period, with African Americans and Blacks trying to move forward but keep running into roadblocks and experiences bringing them back in the past, which is represented in history as dealing with white authorities, specifically police. This is represented through Dash's films, Daughters of the Dust, perfectly through generational gaps as well as through generational trauma. Just like the African Americans trying to move forward, the Pazant family is trying to move forward by moving to the mainland. But they face setbacks with Nana Pazant constantly trying to persist them into staying on the island with her traditional rituals and traditional African roots. They also face setbacks with the trauma of Eula being raped and possibly impregnated by a white landowner, which this can be seen in history as another form of abuse from white leaders. Even though when the film was released, it wasn't that big of a hit film, but now it is getting the recognition that it deserves, as well as many other films created during this period, such as Adwa by Haley Jurima and Compensation by Zinabu Irene Davis.
Now, continuing through, here's the formal analysis where we'll be covering first, about the film, what aspect do we gain? Second, what is being focused on? And third, why this one? So, throughout the scene, I'm able to demonstrate how one is able to see how as a whole within the film being created on how we gain the perspective closely. As these 2 characters, the Nana Pazant and the little girl, narrate the tale, which presents mostly close-ups and fades of transitions used to manipulate time as this portrays the story. This is one of the technical aspects which is given throughout the film. When moving down the line, the characters, you might ask, why are they all in white? When I began to dive into the symbolism of white, I could see on how there was meaning of purity, which the film does focus on, and how it is important to them. As well, this color representing wealth and a fresh new start. Continuing through, now within the tale being told, one sees a continuous figure who goes about the family. Who might this little girl be? Later, and not until the very end, besides a near clear demonstration of her being not attached this time, as she runs through one of the characters, the audience becomes aware on how she is the unborn child of Eula and Eli. She tells a tale and brings everyone with her. It's as if it's a live-action storybook. Lastly, with having the film begin and end with a close-up of a prayer, I believe this shows the growth of coming together with unification and becoming one as the members of the family were bringing in the old and with the new and connecting it all as one, demonstrating a full circle of it all. Throughout the scene, we see Nana Pazant holding a book contained with the Gula language, which is like Geechee Sea Island Creole, aka broken up French. As well, one can see on how the book that she is holding is wrapped and covered in preserves. As this continues on, we see how the family slowly, one by one, begin to come up and kiss the book, showing in a sense an understanding and respect of the past teachings. The setting is the Sea Islands within the year of 1902, and this is again within the Gula family. Here, I will now present the scene.
They from me, from them, from us. Same soul as you are me. Come, children, kiss this hand full of me.
Lord, have mercy, have mercy.
Take my hand. Ariwawa can give you sweat. Take me where you go, by your strength.
So, as you can see, this is the reflection of the Gula family's ancestry and the bondings that they have within their surroundings, as nature and family collide. Second, the meaning shows the feelings that the characters have been facing and how they are attempting to portray it. Throughout the scenes, we are able to see on why the characters and how they've been battling within their emotions within themselves. Then, third, the purpose shows the character development and reasons as to why the family acts as they do. Now, I believe that this is because they are attempting to fit in with the society they're about to face within the mainland. They're trying to blend in. But Nana Pazant grasps onto what she knows and shows the flaws in forgetting and not thinking that a connection is left between them and their past loved ones. So even though the group is about to change course, one is able to see on how to withstand the change and reconcile with past traditions is necessary.
I wanted to start off this section with a review of the stuff that we have discussed in class regarding the LA Rebellion. So that leads us to the question, what defines an LA Rebellion film? First of all, they're typically influenced by films from Latin America, Italian neorealism, European art films, and most importantly, emerging cinema from Africa. The makers of these films are most typically African American film students coming from UCLA. They are rebelling against blaxploitation films from the same period. These films usually reveal spiritual and or psychological challenges Black people have faced and typically suggest the economic status of subjects as a result of structural oppression. They also explore the world of the Black working class and poor people, and on top of that are against Hollywood narrative aesthetics, production methods, and distribution. Daughters of the Dust fit very well within the basic outline of an LA Rebellion film. Like other filmmakers from this era, Julie Dash is a student from UCLA, which is the root of the rebellion. Her films address spirituality as well as the economic standing of African Americans. It also does not follow a Hollywood distribution method, editing style, and is a non-narrative story. It is basically the definition of an LA Rebellion film. The creation of the Daughters of the Dust was most heavily influenced by the current and past events of the era, as well as Dash's own family experience. Her father was a member of the Gullah clan, and in the plotline of Daughters of the Dust, you can see the reflections of his immigration story. And in terms of events at and before the time of the film, change was brewing through the civil rights movement and was sparking the voices of more African American creators, and soon later, the voices of female creators. Dash ended up becoming the first African American female to direct a feature-length film, only making her film more significant. As a response to blaxploitation films, as most LA Rebellion films were, Dash aimed to show that Black cinema was much more than stories of hypersexualized criminals. She created a film with depth that centered around the importance of family, tradition, and growth. Beyoncé's 2016 Lemonade album was heavily influenced by the Daughters of the Dust movie. Displayed through moments in her music videos for Sandcastles, All Night, Formation, Love Drought, and so on, a lot of sets, shots, clothing, and production design and overall themes reflect those of Daughters of the Dust.
Displayed here, you can see her recreating the tree scene with Yellow Mary, her lover, and Eula, but her version for the music video. I believe this to be another symbol referencing Daughters of the Dust through its familial themes and emphasizing the importance of not forgetting tradition or where you come from, even if you change and become your own person.
So in conclusion, some of the takeaways from our presentation and from the film is that when moving forward, to not forget the past. The film was also made during the civil rights movement, and it rebelled against blaxploitation. It was a respectful way to do so. The filmmakers wanted to show the Black experience as humanely as possible, and within the Black cinema movement, new indie cinematic movements were by documenting the Black experience. We thought that most of the films during this time were respectfully made and portrayed the Black experience in a positive light, especially when blaxploitation was in a negative way.
These things relate to our opinions because we thought it was an accurate portrayal of the Black experience throughout the film, and it was underappreciated at the time, but is currently resurfacing, mostly because of its all-Black female cast and crew.
It was overall a heartwarming film about classic family dynamics. The shots were very beautiful, and their lives were interesting to learn about.